So I chose about 10 children, and 2 of those were high ability readers to kind of give a bit of a benchmark for where your sort of on track readers and then the greater depth readers as well were as well. So I did change the groupings a little bit as well in the last half term. So I had a bit more of a spread in there. I carried on with those children that were my lower sort of underachievers. And then I had a few more in there for benchmarking, really, because that did help with the accuracy scores and things like that to kind of work out where other people were. So yeah, it was a really interesting project actually to see what the difficulties were in reading, and it really picked up how some children were reading really inaccurately. They were reading some bits accurately and then missing whole sections out, missing words out, repeating words. So it wasn't even that they weren't understanding, they weren't able to decode a lot of the words. Sometimes that was the problem, but a lot of the time it was the high frequency words that they weren't including. And that was quite interesting because it meant that I could, when I actually managed to read with them, or when we were doing guided reading sessions, I could give them that feedback and say to them, you know, this is what, you know, you often find challenging, this is what we need to work on. And it did have an impact, I think, because looking at their data, the children that I targeted were ones that were sort of getting scaled scores of kind of low 90s, high 80s on Pyro in autumn and spring. And all of those children converted to being loosely on track. Although obviously with a pinch of salt, because I think the Pyro scores, that's still taking them as they're quite low, isn't it? It's still like 92, 93 as being on track. So if I looked at that slightly differently,
no, I think it's 94 now. Actually,
has it been put up to 94?
I think the summer threshold's 94 for Key Stage 2.
I hadn't seen that, but that still doesn't change things actually that much. Most of them were pretty much converted. And I never did any of the really weak readers. So I suppose next what I'd be looking at is getting them to do sort of age appropriate texts, sort of maybe even year 2, year 3 texts. So I tended to use the Shine texts to support them with that. But yeah, even looking at that data now, I think most of them converted, and we're looking at scale scores of sort of 96 and up. So it did help pick up some of those things, and obviously some of that's time. It's hard to know what exactly it was, but I started doing it at a time when I didn't have a TA in the room at all. So it was helping me to pick up with those children who weren't the lowest 20% readers. They were the next ones up that sort of don't typically get an awful lot. One of the TAs in my school has been doing a bit of work with this project as well, kind of completely independently actually. And so we're going to work together a little bit on that next year, because she's been speaking to other TAs about it and other teachers about it. So I think it's something that we'd like to use going forward, because of, you know, those people I've shown it to have been really impressed by the sort of the way that it assesses the reading, and the accuracy and the fluency of the reading is really interesting. I like the challenge assignments that it gives them now. I remember saying to you, Dan, I thought that would come. So they would actually, you know, get them to look at those words in more detail to help. And that's been better than what it had before. What I'd like now, and I wonder if they'll do this next, is comprehension questions, whether you can write through. So it's a bit more like accelerated reader. So not only can you look at the accuracy and the fluency, maybe you can go a step further and actually look at comprehension as well, potentially, because you don't always know. Sometimes I've got some children that are really accurate readers but still don't score that well in Pyro. So it's like, where do you go next from that? So I don't know what its capability is really in terms of, you know, diagnostics like that, or doing a bit of comprehension in there as well. But yeah, I found it a really interesting project.
If there was the facility for the comprehension, I would stick with the Shine intervention questions. So because you know you're not having to make up any specific kind of questions, you can use those. So it's about using Shine as a one-to-one, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been really good, because I've been using that sort of whole class as well, and actually it's been really good for pre-teaching for those children, because we've done the text and I've said, oh, you guys have seen this before. So in terms of a pre-teaching, it's been a really easy exercise for that. So they've seen the text, there's some familiarity there, and yeah, in terms of the questions, that would be really easily done if that were a thing that Microsoft wrote into the program later.
How much time? Sorry, Dan.
So that would be a kind of a nice to have, wouldn't it? Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe something down the track. I mean, what they did implement halfway through was the reading coach, which was a bit like the challenge assignment, but it would have a model for you. So the reading coach would break down the word into syllables, and you could run it through several times and hear it being said. So I mean, the focus was very much on decoding, I suppose, wasn't it? And moving on to fluency after they could, break it down. So the comprehension aspect isn't something that they've been able to do. And I'd imagine would be a much more complex process if you understand what I mean, how to program the computer. Maybe if the teacher set almost a forms like thing, right and wrong things, but it kind of led into that might be something that they can look at down the line. In terms of your kind of methodology, how frequently would that group of children use the the reading progress assessment?
Weekly, generally. That's what I try to aim for. I suppose I do it maybe a little more frequently. I think trying to get the time to get them to do it wasn't terribly difficult, but when your curriculum's really packed, sometimes I'd aim to do it on a certain day, and then I'd get to the end of the day and think, oh no, I haven't done that thing. And it was really hard as well to find space for them, because we're a really big school. So sometimes they'd end up outside on the playground doing it, or outside in the corridor, and then the wind would kind of pick up things that they were saying, and it would like blank out things, and you'd have to really check. But I mean, weekly, and it takes per child sort of 5 minutes, really.
Yeah. And did they get... Sorry,
I just wanted to know how long it took you to get it ready to set it up.
Oh, minutes, really, because I would just take the Shine text, sometimes something different, something from AR, or something just kind of age linked. The Shine ones, I suppose, are the most reliable there, or a Pyra test or something for ease for the text, and I'd just get that on there, and I don't know, minutes really, because you just have to copy and paste it, or you just save it as a document and it'll do it all for you. So that was easy enough.
Brilliant.
Quick setup. It's quite quick to do. It's just getting into the rhythm of doing it. But I definitely think it's effective. And I think even doing it once a week gives you enough diagnostics, especially if you do the same text a couple of times. So you're getting that reading fluency in. So I tended to repeat them a few times, and then we do another one. And sometimes they were longer, sometimes shorter, because I noticed that the children struggled with the longer text to read them on the screen. So I tried a shorter one, and that was better, but it's trying to kind of find the balance for them when they're reading. Some of them said they found it hard to read on the screen, but it is what it is, and they managed quite well, I think.
And did they use Chromebooks and that was without headphones or microphones? They just used the inbuilt speakers and they did. Inbuilt microphone.
Some of the challenge assignments didn't always seem to work with some of the Chromebooks, and I don't know whether that was, sometimes it was the children or whether it was the Chromebook, because a few times they brought it to me and said, oh, it wouldn't work, and it would, like, the little green button for recording wasn't on. I don't know whether that was them not allowing the microphone, because you have to do that every time, and for younger ones they found that really hard, and I don't think there's any way around that with a Chromebook, but it was just a matter of training them to just always press allow on everything, because they always deny everything. I don't know why children always deny permissions, but they think it's wrong, don't they?
So what age, when you said the younger children, what age was this cohort, this subgroup?
Mine are year 4, so they're 8 and 9. So I think definitely key stage 2. I think you probably with key stage 1 you'd be more likely to have adults with them anyway, potentially in some schools, depends, I suppose. I think it's easier with key stage 2 because they can be more independent with it, definitely. But I did start the program thinking, well, if you've got an adult in the classroom, you don't necessarily need to do the reading progress. But I actually changed my mind on that, because when I was reading with children, they were reading a whole lot better than when they were reading on the Teams progress. And they were a lot less accurate because there wasn't somebody prompting them all the time. So it was interesting to see how they reacted, why their Pyra scores were weak, because when they read on their own, they're quite weak and not very fluent. So it really did provide quite an interesting sort of juxtaposition between how they read with an adult to how they read on their own.
Yeah, and in terms of that age group we were talking about, so I mean, you could see it being used from year 3 to year 6, but targeted sort of thing. So
yeah, I think so. I think it would work with, I think for ease and time, sort of curriculum management, really. I think you could do it with a whole class, and that would be lovely. I sort of dropped off my better readers as I went along, because they just didn't need to do it more than once. To kind of have them for the benchmark, and their accuracy rates are really good, and then I dropped them off. So you don't really need all of your class to do it. It's good to start off with a varied group, and then once you really get into who's got kind of more diagnostic sort of diagnosing problems, that's when you can sort of shrink the group down. And they quite liked that they were in this little group, it made them feel, she set me another test kind of thing, and they liked it. They did like doing them. It was quite positive from that perspective.
What about the use of video? Did they always video themselves, and did you always watch the video back? Was it helpful, that aspect?
Yeah, it was really interesting, again, because the way that they read in private was very different to how they were reading when they read in front of the class and when they read to me. And I noticed things that I perhaps wouldn't have done when they were unprompted reading on their own with the video. And it was good to be able to skip about to hear, to correct things that were wrong, or mispronunciations and bits and bobs. But it was pretty accurate, I'd say. All of that, the color coding was pretty good as well to accompany that.
Yeah, so you weren't having to overwrite the AI analysis significantly. It was just minor tweaks, was it? Would you say?
Little bits, and nothing that really kind of skewed the percentages or anything. No.
Yeah, and did you make use of the kind of the insights analysis? So I don't know, after 6 weeks or something, you could see, how accuracy levels had changed or whatever. Was that of any use, or how did you use that?
Yeah, so I had a look at having a look at their challenging words was interesting, because a lot of those were the same for a lot of children, and I could see where like vocabulary is so weak in our school because they're not accessing that kind of literature or that kind of book talk and family talk on a regular basis. So that was really interesting. It was interesting as well to sort of see who was, I'm just looking at it now, who was kind of performing really well, who was leaving absolutely loads out, and a lot of that kind of corresponded with the data that I had from Pyra as well. And it really did, that sort of the student list with their kind of color coded accuracy really did help me to pick up where the problems were. And actually, as I said, it did align with our sort of AR data, with our reading ages, and it did align with how they're doing in Pyra, that they really lack stamina. Their decoding is not always reliable, and they're not always reliable at reading everything accurately or fluently. So it's picking that up then. That's what is sort of next, is then taking that and picking it up. So yeah, the insights were good. It kind of showed that reading speed was going up. So the amount of words per minute had increased, which I'd expect as they got used to using the technology, I suppose. And, it shows their average accuracy, and you can see, kind of dig into that per pupil as well, which I found quite helpful to look at. I got a bit obsessed with it at one point, looking at all the different data bits, because it's just another thing to add, and you can triangulate it with Pyra and with accelerated reading, and you experience in the classroom. You've got 4 things to kind of put together, and it definitely gave me a better picture of the children's reading, because I think in Key Stage 2 and adults are not, we don't have an adult per class, probably most schools don't now. You don't get to read with your children as much as you'd like, and not in the quality way. And it gave me that I hadn't had before, and it gave me a much fuller insight over the children's reading, definitely.
And I know you didn't use it as a out of school activity or a homework activity. What would be the potential for that in terms of, trying to get children to, perhaps read more frequently, or get feedback on that? Is that something that you think would have a lot of potential for schools, or is it really an in-school tool?
No, I think it could, because it doesn't need to be in school. And actually, if anything, it would kind of relieve curriculum time if you did it at home. It's easy to do. It's and it's same, and you could differentiate that as well, because obviously you can set for different groups of pupils. So, for my very, very low attainers, they could have, read ditties essentially, all the way up to the kind of year 4 text that we'd be using. So yeah, I definitely use that. And then you, like we said earlier, you could kind of accompany that with a forms quiz, so then you're getting the whole picture delivered, if you like. So yeah, there's definite potential for that.
I just think as a parent, it might be quite interesting to see as well, to see to review how your child's reading over a period of time. You've got that video evidence if you're trying to support them. I don't know.
I did show it to parents, actually. At Parents' Evening, I showed it to some of the parents, and they were really interested to see what it did and how it worked. I think they were more kind of amazed by the tech, really, but to actually delve into what it actually does, and then be able to give parents some, because fluency is something they can really help with at home. I think they struggle to help with comprehension because they don't know what questions to ask always, but actually fluency and developing that kind of skill, that's something that they could help more with. So it could really provide some good tips for that, and really good sort of communication with parents that way.
Yeah, I mean, one for you, Jen. I mean, how much is fluency an issue in terms of, how much should we be focusing on improving fluency, which is really an accuracy, which is what this tool's about, really, and less so about comprehension? I mean, would you be more concerned, of doing more on comprehension and less on fluency, or is that balance between everything sort of?
No, definitely fluency is key to the further sort of to the advancement of reading skills. We need to get that fluency embedded in the Read Write Inc. The sort of progression is all the way through grapheme phoneme correspondences and decoding to a fluency section, and then to a comprehension section. And so if we've got children who need extra practice with developing fluency, it sounds very useful as a diagnostic tool and a practice. So it's giving them extra time to develop their fluency, and also giving Jania and the teachers that might use it time to look at where they're going wrong. I mean, able readers may read with sort of less fluency than we would like them to, but if they're still scoring okay in the PIRA, then we know that they're okay with their comprehension, and we talk to them about it. And so I can think of several adults that I know who don't like reading out loud, and so they don't sound very fluent. That's different. If they genuinely are not reading fluently, then this sounds like very useful tool. I think it would be good to do it as homework, as an additional piece, as home reading. I think if we slim down what gets sent home as homework, and it's focused on the things they really need to work on, that would be great.
I'd agree. I'd agree completely.
So in terms of next year, Virginia, what obviously I'm not going to, I don't at this stage, I don't plan to track you and sort of see what you're doing. You're a busy teacher, you've got loads to do. What role will reading progress play? Will you still be with year 4, or will you be changing? Or
no, still with year 4. I've got a much smaller class next year. I've only got 21. And they're not too bad at reading, but it will be interesting to kind of have a look at where they're at with AR, and have a look at their PIRA scores from this term as well, and see, where that can be used. I've got quite a few children with EAL. I've got several Romanian children with quite limited English. So it's looking at the potential for using it there, kind of maybe in like collaboration with Immersive Reader sort of technology as well. The first thing will be to get them fully trained up on Teams, make sure they know how to use it first, because that's always the first step. But yeah, I can see myself using it in a really similar way to how I did this year, just making sure it's consistent, that they do it every week, and I remember to set it at the beginning of the week and complete it as well.
The coaching, I think, will help a lot with EAL pupils, so that they're actually pronouncing words correctly, because what tends to happen is they develop their own way of pronouncing a word. They know what it means. They're very bright, they pick up what the word means, but they will forever pronounce it incorrectly because they mislearn.
That extension was a really welcome one, because I think when we first started this, I said, I really wish it did something more with the words, it just used to get them to read them again, and now it's got this different system, which is much better. So yeah, I'd agree. I think that would be really helpful.
In terms of other teachers at Hillview, are you in a position to kind of, recommend or encourage them to use it so it becomes a systematic thing that at certain stages in the school, year or certain year groups, that they're aware of it and they know how to use it?
Yeah, it's sort of a kind of little part of our digital strategy. I know Danielle's been working on that a lot, and she asked me to contribute some bits about that, because obviously we've done a lot of work with other schools and with this over the years. So it is, I put it in as part of that. So I'd like to do some training at probably some point during the autumn term on that, whereas probably workshop based, I'd have thought, rather than kind of whole school inset. I'd probably start with my own team first and do it with year 4, perhaps with the upper school, and then kind of go from there. But yeah, I want to disseminate it more widely, because I think it's got quite a lot of potential.
I'm just looking at your data and looking at your current year 3s, who look like they could do with a bit of a boost in the autumn. So it's I wonder whether you stick with year 4 actually, based on your data. So if you're getting them anyway.
Yes.
So
yeah.
It looks like their data's flagged up already for the PIRA.